Every time Jen Dean speaks, I can see hope, knowledge, expertise, wisdom, and love.
When Jen Dean speaks about parenting, we make sure that we are there to listen because we know we will get valuable advice.
Families Matter Most with Jen Dean.
She doesn't just give skills for us to be better parents, but she teaches us how to reach our children's hearts. And at the end of the day, that's what truly matters.
Welcome back to another episode of the Families Matter Most podcast. I am very grateful to have a special guest with me. We have Courtney Levalley here. Courtney works at Sofia House. And please tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing over at Sofia House.
I am the children's program coordinator. I work with the children mainly and with the moms with different aspects of parenting. We do some counseling sessions and a lot of group programs.
Okay, and what is Sofia House?
Sofia House is a second stage shelter for women and children fleeing domestic violence.
Like, how big is Sofia House? How many beds or how many apartments? How does that look?
So right now we have 2 buildings that we're operating out of. One building has 10 units and another one has 4 units. We are hopefully going to be moving to a new building and we will be expanding. We will have 20 second stage units and 19 third stage units.
So would you mind sharing a little bit about the women's shelter aspect, the difference between first stage, second stage, third stage?
So first stage would be like your emergency shelter, and that's if you are in need to get out like immediately right away. A second stage, you can do a self-referral. So if you are somewhere, at least somewhere safe that you can stay for a little while, then a second stage would be your next step to work towards that independent living. Just removing yourself from that dangerous situation, that's where you go to emergency shelters.
And then hopefully you get moved into a second stage.
Yes, if you can get into second stage or if you can find other independent, safe housing.
Okay, and then what is third stage? What is that?
Really similar to second stage, but there is a little bit more independence. They're still living within the building. They still have that security, that secure, safe pieces of living.
Yes.
But they don't necessarily have to participate in the weekly programs. There's still somebody there that they can go to check in with, but it's not a constant, and they're kind of more, just more independent.
If I'm correct, then you're building more spaces. Sofia House needs more. Like
yes.
Families, women, moms. This problem isn't getting better, it's getting worse.
Yes, absolutely. We always have a wait list.
Oh, which is so hard to think about. These are moms and kids that are waiting to get into a safe environment. And hopefully now you'll have more spaces. Are there any stats that we should know about either in Saskatchewan or in Canada?
There are 2.5 to 3 times as many female victims as there are male victims. But it also does happen to men. It happens obviously more often with women of color, Indigenous women, people that are gender fluid, have disabilities. Any sort of social or economical is a risk factor.
And I've heard that intimate violence is actually the highest in Saskatchewan.
Yes, it is true.
Oh, that's terrible. That's the stat we don't want to win at.
No, it's not. And in Saskatchewan, we only received provincial funding for the first time in 2023 for second stage shelters.
So all of your support is coming from other places?
Yeah, from other grants, from donations.
I wasn't aware of that. Well, we're going to ask at the end, towards the end, because I know there are predominantly women. Most of my podcast listeners are women and moms. And so I know already there are moms that are like, what can we do? What do you need? And so maybe you want to answer this right now. Is because we have moms, I'm sure, listening that are like, yes, I'm there. Do you need items? Do you need clothing? Do you need gift cards? Do you need money? Like what actually does Sofia House need to move forward?
Sofia House right now, in terms of like donations, I think we're okay. Every now and then we'll put a call out to social media, especially for furnishing a unit. We're expecting a family to move in. being that right now we're moving to the new building, we're not really taking a lot of donations, but donations of time, of people supporting our services, people advocating for what we do in order for us to get those extra funding and spread the word, and that there is a need for this.
So we can do that by following your social media?
Absolutely. Sofia House is on Facebook and on Instagram.
Okay. We will link to that. So in the show notes of the podcast, there will be links that you can click through, you can follow. And that way, if there is a need, hey, we actually need bikes for the kids. Anybody got some bikes, or we need this, or you know what, we really need funding. We can kind of follow and support you that way, and then share. I like what you're saying, Courtney, is to like share it out. This is what's going on literally in our town, in our backyard, and we can help.
Yeah, for sure.
Would you mind defining, we talk about intimate violence?
Intimate partner violence.
Okay, so that means a married couple. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, that's usually between two partners, spouses, boy, girl, boy, any sort of intimate relationship.
And what would you say to someone who may be listening to this right now and would be thinking like, I don't think it's abusive. I don't think it's violence. I don't know. Maybe they're questioning, is this intimate partner violence? What would you say to them?
I would say if your instinct is to question whether or not it is, it probably is. I would reach out for help. Find somebody that you can trust, that you can talk to. Quite often, once you find that one person willing to help, others will come running.
So reach out to find that one person and just start saying, hey, I think this is what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then what if you're that person and someone comes to you and they say, I think this is going on? Or what if there's someone you suspect could be in a situation where it's intimate partner abuse? Like what would you say to that person?
If you suspect somebody is in an abusive relationship, I would just be as supportive and as non-judgmental as you can. Mm-hmm. Don't tell them to leave. Don't ask why they're staying. Just be there. Be that person that they can come to when they need and when they're ready to make a change.
When I was younger, I was way too young to have been in this situation, but I was in an abusive relationship with a boyfriend. And I had a couple of people in my life that tried to do perhaps an intervention. And so they would sit me down, and I can think of one friend at the time who sat me down and said, look, this is wrong and you shouldn't be in this. And interesting now as an adult, it makes perfect sense. And what they did, absolutely, I was in a terrible situation. In the moment, what happened is I felt almost accused and attacked by her. And then I found myself making excuses for myself and for my boyfriend. And really what it, in my own mind, I thought I can never talk to her ever again. I can't let her see anything.
Yes, exactly.
But yet, how do you be a friend and see someone and not say, hey, I want to shake you, get out of this?
It is probably the hardest thing that you can do, is to sit there and watch somebody go through something, knowing that they have to recognize it on their own and they have to want the help. But also, in having said that, like, it's frustrating as it is. The flip side of that is if you tell them to leave, it could encourage them. It could make them want to dig their heels in, right? Like you said, you're going to make excuses for your partner now. You're not going to be open to telling that person.
No.
If it ever comes to it, you're going to feel like, oh, they were right, or I should have listened. Nobody wants to hear I told you so. And that's really like, that's part of that stigma and part of people saying, well, you should leave, you should do this. Part of that control is if somebody, if you're getting frustrated with somebody that you know or you think is in a situation, and I see this a lot, is that people will just decide to cut them out of their life. Well, they're not making good decisions, so I can't support this, so I'm just not going to talk to them. But then that plays into the isolation of the abuser, and that gives them more control, and it makes the victim more isolated, so that when they do eventually want to ask for help, there's nobody there for them.
And on the flip side, I can also see that it would be really hard to continually perhaps watch someone in a situation, and they might cut them out because they might say, I just can't watch this anymore.
Yeah, for your own self-care.
Oh, it's just so hard. You know, looking back, I found that I was modifying my behavior for the abusive boyfriend because I didn't want to make him angry. So I was walking on eggshells around him. Mm-hmm. I was sneaking and hiding stuff from my parents because I was young. Mm-hmm. Didn't want them to find out. And then all of a sudden now with these friends, I couldn't let them find out either. It was just so exhausting.
Yeah. And then you create this alternate reality, basically, that doesn't really exist in anybody's world except for you and the abuser, which kind of brings you closer, but it also drives the wedge.
Yeah.
It is very isolating.
And absolutely, I felt very isolated. I felt like I was so exhausted trying to live this life around all these different people and yet completely alone all at the same time. Well, we're going to put some links to some resources. Now, Courtney, we're going to talk and find some links to some resources of places to send people who are perhaps considering whether or not this is, in fact, an abusive relationship that I'm in, or some links for people that if you think you know someone who might be in an abusive relationship. And let's remember, and Courtney, maybe you could help to define this. It's not just physical abuse. There's lots of different kinds of abuse, isn't there?
Absolutely. And that's another thing, too, is that we don't always see the abuse. A lot of abuse is emotional or psychological. Like there's gaslighting, manipulation.
Yes.
We already talked about isolation, then the control. There's financial abuse. There's spiritual abuse. Like the list is almost endless.
What can we do? What can we do moving forward? I know moms are listening to this, and some moms are like, I have to do something. I have to bake food and send it. I have to reach out. I have to give money. I have to... But even stepping back as a society, what are we doing wrong that we need more spaces and not less? What are we doing wrong? We're missing something here.
I think instead of looking at the women and saying, why didn't she leave sooner? Or why did she go back? Why did she do this, that, and the other thing? Why aren't we looking at the men and saying, why did he do this? Where did his trauma come from that he feels the need to control his partner? And I think we just need to educate ourselves on interpersonal violence, interpartner violence as a whole, and like those effects of trauma and how it trickles through generations, and educate our children.
Yeah. And that's what these moms are doing when they escape the abuse and the violence going on in their family, in their home, and they come to Sofia House with their kids. They are making that decision that we are starting new. And it's a steep learning curve because not only do they have their personal trauma, their kids have their trauma. We've got behaviors. We're trying to create a life. We've got school. And I can't imagine, parenting is hard as it is. I can't imagine adding all of these other things going on in life, and now you're starting over, often with nothing.
Yep.
How do we help? What do we do?
I mean, I feel like that's one of the great things about Sofia House is that when they do come in, we have those furnished units, and it is independent living, but we have those built-in supports. So somebody can go down and talk to a program coordinator right up until midnight if they just need somebody to listen to.
This actually provides some tools to help women process what's going on in their own traumas, but also there's some accountability, some safety features.
Yes. Yeah. And like with the case planning, we can make those independent goals, and it's providing that self-reflection and still having that independent living. Whereas instead of like you're moving in with your mom or an auntie or sister or family member, you still have control. And I think that is another really important piece, is having that control of your life and having the autonomy to make those choices.
And I feel like having been there, I get to go there from time to time and share some parenting principles. Having been there, it's a community. It feels like the moms are developing relationships. There's friendships. They're encouraging each other. There's some supports there in addition to the staff.
Yes. It is really great, honestly, to see the women progress the way that they have from, being full of anxiety and that fear and that trauma to the willingness to open up and share their story with new residents as they come in and share that Me Too. And that's really vulnerable of them, but it's also really brave, and it helps everybody with their healing.
No, Courtney, I have a question for you. You work a lot with the kids.
Yes.
And the youth programming. Are there specific things that you see over and over again, kids coming in, because they've been through a ton?
Oh, absolutely.
Already. Like, are there certain behaviors that you see that you just know this is what happens? This what they're dealing with stuff. This is what I'm going to see.
A lot of kids have physical symptoms. A lot of like stomach aches, headaches, problems with school, I think, is like our biggest battle right now. Sometimes it's school attendance. There's other things that play into school, like race, having Indigenous families attend school with maybe non-Indigenous families and not understanding differences in culture and differences in food. And the way that the kids behave is very different also from kid to kid. Some kids will internalize it and become quiet, and other kids will become really excited or overwhelmed, and then they're bouncing off the walls, and it almost looks like ADHD.
Really? But
Yeah.
it's not always ADHD.
No, it's not. It's that overwhelming trauma and not knowing what to do with it.
And it's in their bodies physically.
Yes.
So they're like, yeah, I could absolutely see that. Some kids, it would look like there's hyperactivity and they're fidgety and they can't sit still and they can't focus. And other kids, they might just seem to appear to shut right down.
Yeah, a lot of daydreaming, or they appear sad, or they are sad. They're constantly living in a state of survival, and that's exhausting.
That is exhausting. And Courtney, you're there for that. And you've
Yes.
got to stay calm and be okay with all of it.
Yes.
A little bit wild and crazy sometimes. But
Sometimes, oh, absolutely. But you know what? When they come and give you a hug and say, "Thank you, I feel better," it makes it worth it.
Oh, 100%. Courtney, thank you for coming in and sharing all about Sofia House and what they're doing to serve and help parents and their kids right here in the province. Sadly, but good, they're growing.
Yes.
Right?
Fortunately, unfortunately.
We wish we didn't have this problem, but we're really glad we have more spaces available for women that do need to get out and have a safe place.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me.
We're all going to follow this, and definitely do click to the show notes, click through the links, follow Sofia House on your socials so you can stay in touch that way, and you can support them however they need it. And then also click through the links so that if you suspect someone you know is struggling, you'll be better prepared and feel like you have a plan to know how to support them.
Yes.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Families Matter Most podcast with Jen Dean, part of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. If you are interested in contacting Jen for one-on-one parent coaching, for speaking engagements, or just to get a little more information, please visit our website, familiesmattermost.com.